Hey guys, gals, and MBs, I'm here today with just a collection of Chase Bliss pedals, and these are amongst my favorites, and I finally have them again after almost quitting the channel last year, around I think it was October or November. I decided to sell everything, and the Chase Bliss pedals won during that period of time. I'm glad that I finally changed my mind and got back with making music with hardware, and I have them again, and they're fantastic. And as you saw in my last video, I brought up the Mood again, but I ended up getting the Habit again and the Gen Loss Mk2. So Mood Mk2, Habit, and Gen Loss Mk2. So yeah, absolutely fantastic pedals. I'll be adding a blooper soon again to the setup because there's just so much it can do versus that, and then I can add the microcosm into this in a future video, and we'll have some fun. The signal chain is quite complicated here, and that's why I'm showing everything instead of these all cropped out so we can actually see what's going on. Red cable is carrying the signal from my MPC Key 37 mono, because the Habit is mono. And I have a piano patch here. It's quite lovely. It's a soft Yamaha C7. Yeah, so that's off screen. It's over here. This way. You can actually see my hand. All right, cool. So yes, so going into the Habit, mono in, mono out of the Habit into the Mood. The two settings that are engaged on the dip switches here, and I should say none are engaged on the Habit. Two engaged on the Mood are the spread and the mono in, stereo out. Then the Mood goes in through a TRS cable, so it's carrying both the left and right channel over one cable. Generally, you would use this as a balance cable for noise cancellation, like noise suppression in signal noise on a cable, but you can also use it as a stereo cable where you have two signals going over each individual ring. Well, no, it's a stereo signal, you know what I mean. Anyway, I'm not going to explain too much on that, but stereo going into here, and then stereo coming out of here, and the only dip switch engaged on this is the spread, because we already have stereo coming in. We don't need mono in, stereo out enabled. So the Habit is kind of this weird looping delay thing that has an always listening. Well, it's not always listening, but if it's engaged, it's recording into a 3-minute long buffer that keeps going around and around. You can use a feed through system, which allows it to stack your effects and kind of run it through different effects to let it fade out. You can erase that 3-minute buffer by pushing these two buttons down. Actually, yeah, so you do this. You have to, and then you see the middle thing blink. It's quite like the blooper in that respect, and it has the same chipset as the blooper, but it doesn't have any flash memory in it. It has just RAM and then the XMOS chip that runs everything. It's a multi-core DSP kind of dealy, and that runs everything in the pedal, but since there's no flash memory, there's no persistent memory when you power down the pedal. That 3-minute loop gets destroyed, but that's fine for our use. It makes the longevity of it nice because you don't keep recording to a flash memory buffer. I'm not sure how the blooper works. I think it does record it to the flash memory buffer, but I would actually have to reach out to Chase Bliss. I think I asked them at one point, but I don't remember now if it records to the flash memory or the large amount of RAM. I mean, the large amount for a pedal that's on it. I mean, nowadays you get 24 gigs of RAM, like on a entry level Mac Pro or the M4 Pro version. So it's like, I guess that's not entry level, but you know what I mean? 24 gigs is like easy to come by on a computer, 32 gigs, things like that. I'm talking, this is probably in the megabytes, like hundreds of megabytes instead of gigabytes. All right, all that rambling aside, it's a looping delay that the looping section goes back into the delay section. So if you turn spread down and scan down, it just becomes a pretty standard delay, and then we can have the level here, we can have the repeats here. Repeats works just like standard delay. It's like your feedback control. So let's engage it. Let's turn the time down here. So, and we have no modifiers on. Modifiers make it very interesting. I have the feed switch here set to in, which means that any of the effects will stack up inside of the feedback loop of the repeat section of the standard delay. So we can actually hear that really easy with the stability modifier. So we go over here, we switch this to A, and then we switch this to 2, which it's already on. And then if I go here, what? Each repeat is going to get progressively worse and worse. Now, if you make it really subtle, like you just do it like right here, then it's not so bad and it actually sounds really lovely. So that's one of the things the blooper can do, but the blooper can stack 2 effects at the same time, and you can overdub effects into it and things like that. There's kind of a way to do it on this with using the feed through and the memory, but it's a little more complicated than the blooper. The blooper is more straightforward on pushing effects to a loop, but this is a hell of a lot of fun because as you can see, so I should say, as you can see, you can probably make it out. Maybe it says 60 here. Yes, it's a 60-second delay on top of a 3-minute long constantly recording when it's engaged. You can actually have it constantly recording as well with the dip switch, even when the pedal's bypassed. I don't like that mode. It does have some safeguards against feeding back into itself too much or something along those lines, but it's not my favorite thing because that scared the shit out of me once I turned it on. I had a loud sound in there and it just came blaring through like 2 minutes into unbypassing it, and I'm just like, oh god, what was that? And yeah, so anyway, that said, we can do some really cool Furpertronic style things. We're not going to use A2. Effect A2 is the stability control. So technically on the blooper, you actually have 3 effects you can run out as once because you have a dedicated stability control that can keep stacking and making the signal degraded. So that's another reason I want that one. But again, this has a 60-second delay attached to it, and it's fun. So stability is not what we're going to use because we have a gen loss here, which makes awful cool warbly noises, and that's why I love it so much. But we can use the filter and like the dropper. I'm not going to use any of the speed modifiers because I'm going to use the mood for that. We're also going to use the mood to create stereo width to a mono pedal. Anyway, let's go over to B here, and B2 becomes a multi-mode filter. So over here we have high pass, so it should like fizzle out with a high passing. You got to be really careful about that. That has resonance. It can cause actual self-feedback if you have the repeats up too high. It is a resonant multi-mode filter. So let's do low pass. And just to explain what's going on here on top of everything, we're not using GAN and spread, and those will play into later with the ability to read back in that 3-minute buffer, but since these are not engaged right now, there's nothing happening with that 3-minute buffer. We're just using this as a really cool 60-second long delay. I mean, it's not set at 60 seconds, but again, it's so long that you can easily do Furpertronics. You can do 0 to 60 seconds, so it's just like there's so much you can do there. So let's go ahead and turn it up a little and let's get some longer time in there. And at the lower settings of spread, what'll happen is you'll get a second tap in on the delay. You can hear that it's kind of like galloping. You have a second spread. If you turn it down, it brings it closer to the real time. Yeah. So, and if you turn it past counterclockwise, you start getting it going into the memory buffer instead of I think it's always going, it's always kind of going from the memory buffer, but it's going what happened in the last few seconds, if that makes sense, instead of minutes in the past. I could be very wrong on that. It's a complicated pedal. It's easier to show people than to explain what it's doing because as a Furpertronics pedal, as you can hear, it's gorgeous. I wish the stability had a little bit of low pass or high pass filtering as an ability in it, so you could also get instability as the repeats die out and filtering. But, they don't want to take away from you buying a blooper, right? So it's like that. Okay. What we're going to do now is, I think trails are enabled by default. So if you turn this off, it'll actually go through. Trails are not enabled by default on the Mood. So I have the Mood set to mono in, stereo out, and we have the tape setting on the micro looper. And as I showed in my previous video, we have the fade out engaged on here, and I have the latch mode engaged on here too. So yeah, it'll go into overdub permanently if you hold this down until you bypass it. If you do this quickly, it'll play back whatever's in the loop memory because it's always listening. And then if you hold it down, it goes into overdub. But if you hold down both these switches and turn this control down, what will happen is it'll fade out like a standard delay. So we're stacking a delay into a looping section that's acting as a delay because it's going to fade out. So you can hear that I have it set pretty low, so it'll just come out like, oops, yeah, we want to make sure that's red. That means it's looping and it's constantly overdubbing, which means it's going to fizzle out. Fizzle. Yeah, so, and I have it playing in reverse, and since they're stereo spread, you get reverse in one channel and you get forward in the other, so it's beautiful. And as you can hear, it's not continuously stacking up, it just keeps fading out, because it'll get overbearing if we have a delay going into this, but we want that reverse effect and the stereo spread. And then on the wet channel, I have, as you can see, we have the clock right down the center here. We want it fairly low, but not too low, because we want it to be a little lo-fi. I have the reverb engaged, Modifiers turned all the way up, which turns it into a diffused reverb instead of multi-taps trying to be a reverb. I have the time about there, otherwise it's too much. I'm sorry, I don't have feet on it. One thing I should state, that I used to remember that Chase Bliss pedals always came with these little feet in the box, but all these new ones have not been coming with it, so I'm kind of sad about that. And it's just this lovely lo-fi, kind of gritty, long, luscious modulated reverb. I should have used the microcosm in place for this, but let's just make this Chase Bliss all in all through because it's a hell of a lot of fun like that. And since we're going mono in, if you can hear, we get now some really nice space on the piano. It sounds like it's actually, I mean, it doesn't sound like it's in a real room, but it sounds like it's actually mic'd up, and then you have it going through a huge reverb, unless you're in some crazy hall with excess reflections, what couldn't exist in real life because reflections don't work like that because physics and all that. I mean, I don't know. You cannot have a reflection that long in real life. That sounds like that and is obviously modulated. I mean, what would you do? Move the walls? Yeah. So, beautiful, right? Now we engage both these together. Oh, I accidentally put that into just constant looping mode, so it won't get any fresh. Okay, we want that engaged now to go back here and mess with this because we want to get the timing right so it doesn't sound too bad in the overlapping. So I'm going to go ahead and engage this, and now we're still in the standard delay mode. It's a fairly long delay. We have the repeats about halfway up, and we are low pass filtering on each. Going down an octave. And there you go. And that's how I kind of use all these together. And let's have a little more fun. Let's turn the spread all the way up so we get parallel repeats, and let's turn the scan all the way up. Since we're in default, scan is an automatic mode, which means it'll just randomly by itself go back into that 3-minute buffer. So anything we were messing with in that 3 minutes I was talking to you, it'll do weird things with it. It'll just pull out of it. It'll just pluck little bits out. And those go back into the delay. I'm playing just to let you know. Obviously, you can't see me playing because it's off camera. I'm going to turn the level down a little so it's not so loud because it'll get a little too stacky. Isn't that cool? And then you can use this as a foundation for a song. I would honestly like, you know, we could probably just do that because trails should be going now. I think that's only for the delay portion. It won't keep the memory buffer going, will it? Oh no, guess it does, right? No, it's fading out there. So that's literally, then the memory goes back into the delay, so it's got to be on. Okay. Does it erase the memory when it's in bypass? I don't know. Anyway, I was saying, if you got it to work just right, I would put strings over this, and it would sound really beautiful. When you have some randomness coming from the habit, obviously you have the weirdness coming from the reverse whatever from the mood. And then we can make it sound old and decrepit. It's just like, you know, people that shouldn't be running the country and are stupid, but you know, they are. That aside. This is the good kind of old and decrepit. This isn't the, you know, needs to not exist kind of old and decrepit. Alright, yeah, so let's bring in the Gen Loss. I guess I have a little bit of too much of the saturate turned on. So saturate is really interesting on this pedal. I think I explained it in my original video, but a lot of people don't go back and see my old videos. They see the new stuff and then they just don't go back. I don't blame you. But as a summary, saturate works on the idea of oversaturating tape, so it has a little bit of hysteresis to it. So if you have a lot of saturate and you just push the level in, it will smear the signal and it'll sound like an approximation of how tape does its hysteresis and things in it. If you oversaturate tape, it makes it distort in weird and unusual and really beautiful ways, but this tries to emulate it. And this plays in with the models. So you have multiple models. I have the book right here. I mean, I'm not going to go over all the models. I don't have autofocus on. I have manual focus turned on for reasons. Actually, I have like autofocus lock turned on, but whatever. It's focused towards the pedals. That said, I have it right now in a Porta Studio. So if I change these, you can hear the different values. So Porta Studio is around there, and that is a Porta Studio with a, I guess it's just a nice Porta Studio. The second one in that is a Porta Studio in half speed. I think this is a little too muffled. I've never had a Porta Studio, but as a kid I had a Fostex recorder. Fostex. Another Japanese company like Tascam, but it was a competitor to the Porta Studio, and it was obviously a little cheaper, but I got it like used for free. It was actually in a box of crap that I inherited from a friend's dad that was just clearing out a bunch of crap. Anyway, it's a multi-track recorder. It is, I think, a 4-channel? I think it was a 4-channel. And I would assume the Tascam was in the same line, and it was definitely not this muffled. But I think this has really nice feel to it. It's kind of like an old school, maybe it's like an old school broken Porta Studio. And again, without And obviously this is adding wow and flutter. If we turn off like failure, flutter, and then we can just use this as a really cool saturation pedal. So I'll turn the volume down. That's actually this distortion coming out of it. We're not the signal's not too hot to actually distort on the recording, and plus I'm in 32-bit float. It wouldn't be in this at least I think that Logic itself deals with 32-bit float. Yes, I think so. I think so. Anyway, I don't see I'm clipping, but it sounds like I am because of the saturation. But it's lovely. It sounds like analog distortion. And the way tape does it. I mean, I've ran hot signals into standard cassette and into 1/4-inch tape, and it kind of does that. I always figured it was the preamp and not the tape itself, but I guess it is both, right? And yeah, like I said, we kind of have the Habit doing its thing. We have the Gen Loss doing its thing. We have the Mood doing its thing. But okay, so I'm going to turn saturate all the way down. We'll just go through the filters. Right here, this is a 3rd generation. Okay, so Generation Loss, the idea behind it, I mean, I've said this before, and it's obviously told in the video about the Generation Loss, I think. The idea is you record an analog signal back onto an analog signal. So you have one VCR, in this case it's trying to emulate VHS, but you have one VCR recording to another VCR, and in doing so, each time you record from one to the other, and then you keep cascading it. So I'm going to record one deck to the other, then take that recorded video, put it back in the first deck, and then record it back to another tape and keep doing that over and over again. You're going to get a lot of loss. And this is a 3rd generation recording right about here. I'm going to keep adding things to the buffer of the Habit. But yeah, so 2nd generation, 1st generation, which is actually kind of lovely on 1st, and then off. Oh, I guess that's 1, 2, 3. And then we had the Porta Studio, which I like to keep it at normally. Especially with the saturation up. We don't have saturation going right now, but... And then we have 5, which is a half speed. Porta Studio. Then we have 6, which is a 8mm camcorder using the built-in mic. Then we have a handheld dictation machine, so I'm assuming microcassette? Through the internal speaker. Actually, that's way too high a bandwidth to be exactly, because microcassette doesn't have that much bandwidth. I mean, you get a lot of the filtering characteristics. It's kind of cool. I mean, again, it's the spirit of it. It's like not the exact thing. I mean, I guess they did model it quite well, but maybe they did. Maybe that microcassette can sound that good with music. Then we have... This is using the internal microphone of a dictation machine. The first one was... And then we have the Fishy 60, which is a Fisher-Price toy recorder. I never picked one of those up, but you would see them when I was a kid at yard sales all the time. Then you have MS Walker, which is designed by Blank for MS, and that is I guess MS Walker, that'd be a Walkman. And then you have a broken cassette recording device, and then at the very end, you have worn reel-to-reel, so 1/4-inch tape. Turn it down a little. That adds a lot of upper harmonics to it and makes it a little nasally. But if we add some saturation, I like this model too. I actually like a lot of the models. but I tend to stay in this setting in the far end of the dial and the Porta Studio with a little bit of saturation or a lot with the volume to compensate. And then obviously we can add failure in if you turn it all the way up. This is what adds the stereo spread. So you get snagging tape, you get dropouts. I'm not going to add noise because that'll add hum or mechanical noise from a VHS deck, and I have that actually disabled in the secondary menu. So yeah, it's not going to do much here. I was kind of messing with that. But yeah, we have failure all the way up. If you just add a little failure, it's really nice. But that's what adds the stereo spread. I think those snags do. Generally, I put this at the end of the signal chain when I have reverb, and then I have the reverb smooth out those drops and it sounds a little better, but this is nice in this setup because I also have weird pitchy things going on here. So if I had a dedicated reverb like the Erica Sense Night Verb, which maybe I'll run it into, I've never tried that. I have tried this on the Big Sky MX before I sold it. Yeah, I sold my Big Sky MX. I wasn't using it enough. I actually like the Erica Sense Night Verb way better. So anyway, now we can add some wow and flutter. Flutter is the fast bit of modulation on tape, so that, you know, you can hear it. And then you have the wow, which is the slower. I keep it right around here, otherwise it's a little too unbearable in most cases. And of course, one of the cool things you can do is you can have this set to fail mode. So if you want to bring up the failure all the way temporarily, you can either hold this down and then let go. Which that's really fun to do if you have a delay or a reverb after the fact, and it's really big and diffuse because it can add a little bit of character, or this already has a lot of character, but it's a little bit of, it breaks the monotony. Though the randomness of this is really good. But yeah. But you can also latch this to 100%, so this turns the failure, that effectively turns the failure knob all the way up if you just tap it. Let's go back to Porta Studio. And of course, because it's Chase Bliss pedal, if you wanted to, you could modulate any of these. So you could maybe have the failure go from a low setting to a high setting automatically. And the interesting thing about the Gen Loss, it's one of the few that I can think of from the Chase Bliss lineup that has a random switch on the back of it. I know on the Mood you can change the waveform of the LFO ramping to sample and hold, or I think it might be random, but this has just a dedicated switch to have the LFO as a random, so you could have the failure just bounce around everywhere. All right. So let's see how I told you can clear the buffer of the habit. So let's do that. So, oops, you gotta kind of, yeah, it's a little hard to do. You kind of have to just, you can't hold it too long, and you actually have to press it both at the same exact time. So like that. Yeah, so I guess it just works. But yeah, so. And then you can hold this down to hold. Oh, we saw that engaged. And you see that as green, so you know you're holding. That's really cool. And then you have tap tempo, obviously, there too. So. yeah, so that's basically the gist of all this. It's really fun to mess with. I kind of just wanted to make a video on how I use all these together. Once I get the blooper back into the setup and potentially the reverse mode C, which I'm still on the fence about, but maybe not. Once I get the blooper back into the setup, we'll have a little bit of fun with that, and I'll probably bring out the blooper and the microcosm together and Gen Loss. So that'd be a cool combo. So I'll turn the scan down, so go back to normal delay. Are we still stuck in hold? No, we're not. It's fading out now. Anyway, yeah, so that's the gist of it. It's a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed the little video I made on this. It's a lot shorter than my standard videos. Actually, now that I'm coming to look at it, no, it's not. I just spent 30 minutes on this. Whatever, I guess I can't make short videos. I used to. I started by making short videos, but I'll stop rambling right now. I hope you enjoyed this journey of me messing with some Chase Bliss fun, and I really enjoyed showing it off to everybody, so thanks for watching. If you like this kind of content and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go ahead and subscribe. And if you like this video in particular, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye.